Do I introduce them from here?
It was supposed to be just another royal appearance. Prince William smiling, waving, and slipping into his sleek car as cameras flashed all around. But moments after the event, everything shifted. A royal aide rushed forward, faces turned pale, whispers spread like wildfire. Something shocking had been discovered inside Prince William's car, something no one could have expected. Security immediately sealed the area, and the calm, polished royal atmosphere turned tense, uneasy. What they uncovered left even the most loyal staff speechless. It wasn't merely disturbing. This was something that could change how people would perceive the future king forever. Tonight was no ordinary evening. It was a night that would be remembered. The grand ballroom glittered like 1,000 stars had fallen from the sky. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light scattering across marble floors, so polished they mirrored the camera flashes. Reporters pressed against velvet ropes, their voices rising in excitement, capturing the luxury that surrounded them. Every corner shimmered with wealth and tradition. Cars arrived in a steady stream. Tonight was more than just a royal event. It was one of the most significant evenings of the year, a celebration that brought together world leaders, ambassadors, and Britain's most influential figures. Everyone who mattered was present, dressed in their finest, all waiting for the chance to glimpse the royal couple. Prince William stepped out of his car, and the crowd erupted. Cameras clicked relentlessly like raindrops in a sudden storm. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, posture straight, confident. As he waved to the gathered crowd, his smile radiated warmth, the kind that made each person feel he was greeting them personally, even with hundreds of eyes watching every movement. He glided through the entrance with effortless grace, pausing to shake hands with dignitaries along the red carpet. Each interaction seemed casual yet carefully measured. He was the picture of royal composure, calm, collected, and entirely in control. Yet someone noticed subtle differences. Something was slightly off tonight. Catherine walked beside him, breathtaking in an elegant gown that shimmered gently under the chandeliers. Her hair was flawless, her smile perfect for the cameras. But her eyes, sharp and observant, kept flicking toward William. She knew him better than anyone else in that room. She could read the slightest sign of tension hidden beneath his practiced exterior. She noticed the tiny tells that others would miss, his smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, the faint tension in his shoulders, the quick glance at his watch when he thought no one saw. Something was bothering him. Something he hid beneath layers of royal training, public duty, and expectation. Throughout the evening, William moved through the crowd like water flowing downstream. He laughed at the right moments, nodded thoughtfully during serious discussions, and posed for photos with visiting diplomats. Every gesture, every word, perfectly choreographed. This was his life training since childhood, to embody the crown with dignity, no matter what storm was brewing inside. Catherine stayed close, engaging with guests while keeping one part of her attention always on William. When their eyes met across the room, she sent him a questioning look. He responded with a subtle shake of the head, a silent message. Not now, not here. Whatever burden weighed on him would have to wait until they were alone. Hours passed in a blur of handshakes, polite conversation and polished smiles. Waiters glided between guests carrying silver trays of champagne. A string quartet filled the corners with soft music. Speeches were delivered, toasts made. Through it all, William maintained perfect composure. At last, the event began to wind down. Guests started toward the exits, thanking their hosts, climbing into waiting cars. The royal couple gave their final waves, acknowledging the crowd one last time. Security moved into formation, creating a protective barrier as William and Catherine approached their vehicles. The motorcade waited, sleek black cars lined precisely, engines quietly humming. Drivers were alert, prepared for departure. Catherine was guided to her car and hesitated, glancing back at William with concern etched on her face. He gave her a reassuring nod, though the gesture felt hollow even to him. She slipped inside, the door closing with a soft, expensive thunk. William approached his car, acknowledging the security officer opening the door for him. The night air hit him, a welcome relief after hours in the crowded ballroom. He paused, breathing deeply, before leaning back into the leather seat. The door closed behind him with the solid sound of privacy restored. He leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, but something felt off. A whisper of unease crawled up his spine. He couldn't name it yet, but instinct told him something was wrong. The air inside the car felt different, charged with a strange energy that didn't belong. A silence settled, one that made his heart race without reason. Through the tinted window, a staff member glanced inside during a routine check. Casual curiosity turned into a frozen stare. His expression shifted. Professional calm replaced by confusion, then alarm. He straightened suddenly, hand reaching for his radio. The motorcade rolled forward smoothly, wheels turning on the pristine driveway. In seconds, they would reach the main road, heading toward safety. Then, everything stopped. A royal aide stepped into the path of the lead vehicle, arms raised high, face taut with urgent concern. Frantically, he signaled the motorcade to halt immediately. Brakes engaged firmly, smoothly. The entire line of cars froze. Security officers' heads turned in unison, hands moving instinctively to radios. Something was unfolding, something unplanned. In their world, unplanned equaled dangerous. A senior security officer sprinted toward William's car, shoes slapping the pavement, shouting orders to his team. Other guards moved instantly, forming a tighter circle. Their eyes scanned everything and everyone. Confusion rippled through onlookers. Cameras that had been lowering snapped back up, trying to capture the scene. But the guards were faster, forming a human wall around the royal car. The driver of William's car stepped out, drained of colour. Unsteady, he leaned close to a nearby guard, whispering something that widened the veteran officer's eyes. Whatever was said was serious enough to make a seasoned guard genuinely worried. Inside her car, Catherine noticed the sudden stop. She turned, trying to see the commotion. Guards ran, voices whispered urgently, the motorcade frozen in place. William, feeling the halt, opened his door slightly. Cool air rushed in. He leaned out just enough to see. "What's happening?" he asked an officer nearby. No direct answer came. Guards continued consultations in low voices, alarm ringing through every tone. One of them gestured toward the back seat where William had just been seated. He followed the officer's motion. There, partially hidden beneath a document folder, lay something that didn't belong. Ordinary at first glance, yet completely wrong in placement. The question echoed in his mind. How had it gotten there? Who placed it? And most importantly, what was it? A senior guard moved closer, radio pressed to ear, eyes flicking between William and the mysterious object. "We need to call the palace immediately," he said. Steady, but grave. Gloved hands handled the item with extreme care, as if it might shatter at any moment. The object was pulled out, examined briefly under dim light, and slid into a sealed envelope. His face remained neutral, professional, but his hands betrayed him, moving with a hint of urgency louder than any word. The entire atmosphere shifted. Routine became electric. Tension charged the air. Everyone could feel it, yet no one could explain it. More guards appeared, forming an even tighter circle around William's car. Their bodies became walls, eyes sharp and scanning every shadow. The few remaining onlookers were gently but firmly pushed back, guided out of the scene. Cameras lowered, questions went unanswered. Whatever was happening, it was clear. No one outside the security team was meant to see it. William leaned forward in his seat, straining to catch a glimpse of what the officer held. The envelope was sealed, yet for a heartbeat, just a single fleeting moment, he saw it. That brief glimpse drained the colour from his face. His expression shifted like clouds racing across a stormy sky. First came confusion. His brows furrowed as his mind tried to make sense of what he had seen. Then came something heavier, disbelief tinged with shock. His mouth opened slightly, as if to speak, but no words came. He simply stared at the envelope, now held firmly in the guard's hands, the weight of it pressing down on him like a physical force. Catherine stepped out of her car the moment she sensed serious trouble. Her elegant gown forgotten, her concern was written plainly across her face. She moved quickly to his side, leaning close, voice dropping to a whisper meant for him alone. "What is it? What did they find?" William turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath hitch. It wasn't fear exactly, but something just as unsettling, a deep confusion tangled with recognition, as if he had seen a ghost he thought long buried. He shook his head slowly, unable, or unwilling, to put thoughts into words. How could he explain what he didn't fully understand himself? How could he voice something that seemed impossible, even when evidence suggested otherwise? The discovery wasn't finished. 2 more security officers now joined the car, conducting a meticulous search of every surface, every compartment, every inch where something might hide. They moved with precision, their training evident in each careful motion. As they searched, they found more. A folded paper tucked into a seat pocket, a small object wedged between cushions. Each new discovery sparked hushed murmurs among the guards, urgent glances, quick radio codes exchanged. Catherine and William couldn't begin to decipher what had been placed there. Nothing was random. This was deliberate, planned and executed by someone with access to a royal vehicle. The thought sent chills down their spines. The security breach was serious enough on its own, but the nature of the items suggested something far more sinister than a simple protocol lapse. William watched it unfold with growing unease. His mind raced through scenarios, each more disturbing than the last. Thoughts of everyone who had been near the car tonight, all hands that might have touched it, all moments when security could have been distracted. Every possibility gnawed at him. Finally, when the search was complete and every item secured and documented, William spoke. His voice was barely audible. Catherine leaned closer just to catch it. "This can't be possible." The words hovered in the air, heavy with implications. Neither wanted to consider it, yet impossible or not, it was real, it was happening, and now they had to face whatever it meant. A senior advisor appeared at William's side, his face grave. "Your Royal Highness, we need to return to the palace immediately." William nodded, still dazed. Catherine took his arm, silently offering support as they were guided back to the cars. This time, there would be no separation. She slid into his car beside him, and no one suggested otherwise. The convoy began moving again, but the usual calm precision had vanished. The air now carried urgency, tension. Cars moved faster than before, headlights cutting through the darkness like blades. Other traffic was halted, intersections cleared ahead. They weren't merely travelling, they were moving through the night under a sense of controlled flight. Silence wrapped around William like a heavy cloak. He sat perfectly still, eyes fixed on the window as the city blurred past. Streetlights flickered across his features, highlighting a weariness that made him look older than his years. Catherine reached for his hand, finding it in the darkness. Her fingers closed around his, a grip that spoke of both need and gratitude, a small anchor in a suddenly uncertain world. William's mind drifted far from the present. He remembered things he had pushed aside, dismissed as coincidence, a letter that had arrived months ago, no return address, words cryptic and menacing, a strange encounter at another event, someone whose gaze seemed to know too much, an untraceable message on a secure line, brief, mysterious, later investigated with nothing conclusive found. The letter had been analysed, filed away, the stranger never identified. Alone, each incident seemed minor, but together, viewed through tonight's lens, they formed a pattern. Someone had been watching, someone had been planning, and tonight, they had made their move. Catherine watched William's face, reading the thoughts turning behind his eyes. She squeezed his hand gently, a silent offer of support, knowing him well enough to wait. He would share when he was ready, when he had sorted the chaos inside his own mind. The towers of Buckingham Palace appeared in the distance, illuminated against the night sky. Normally that sight brought comfort, a return to safety, but tonight, even the palace walls seemed fragile, less secure than they had that morning. As they drew closer, William finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Someone is trying to send a message." A chill ran down Catherine's spine. "What kind of message?" she asked, but William didn't answer. Perhaps he didn't know yet, or perhaps the answer was too troubling to voice in the darkness of a moving car. Even now, the envelope containing the mysterious items had already been rushed ahead. By this time, it was in the hands of the palace's top security team, being examined, analysed, and tested for anything that might reveal its origins or purpose. The motorcade passed through the palace gates, which closed with a heavy, final thud behind them. A small, tight-knit group waited inside. Despite the late hour, top royal advisors stood in a cluster, their faces drawn with concern. The head of security was there too, posture rigid with professional alertness. William's car stopped. He drew a deep breath, straightening his shoulders. Whatever came next, whatever the items meant, whatever message had been sent, he would face it. He was a prince trained for moments like this, for crises and secrets lurking in the shadows. The private room deep within Buckingham Palace had witnessed countless historic events, but tonight it carried a different weight. Heavy curtains blocked the world outside. Doors were locked, guarded. Inside, a small circle gathered around a polished table. William sat at the head, Catherine beside him, hand resting lightly on his arm. Around them were only the most trusted officials, the head of security, 2 senior advisors, and the private secretary whose discretion was beyond question. These were people whose loyalty had been proven over decades. They understood that what happened in this room would never leave it. The sealed envelope sat in the center of the table like a sleeping serpent, innocent in appearance, yet potentially dangerous. All eyes focused on it. No one dared move first. Finally, the head of security donned a fresh pair of gloves and reached forward. He broke the seal slowly, deliberately, as if any sudden movement could trigger disaster. The room held its breath as he opened the envelope, removing its contents carefully. An old photograph, edges yellowed and worn, a folded letter creased from repeated reading, and a small card bearing a strange, intricate symbol in faded ink. William leaned forward, eyes locked on the items. His professional mask cracked, revealing raw emotion. Breaths quickened. Hands trembled slightly on the table. Catherine noticed immediately. She moved closer, alarm growing in her eyes. Whatever he was seeing, whatever these items meant, they cut deep into places he usually kept carefully guarded. The photograph showed a woman William would have recognized anywhere. His mother, Princess Diana, looking young, radiant, and full of life, yet she wasn't alone in the image. Beside her stood someone whose face had been deliberately obscured, as if scratched away on purpose, erased to hide an identity. The background suggested intimacy, privacy, a fleeting moment never meant for public eyes, a memory caught in secrecy. It felt alive, urgent, as though it carried a warning across time. The letter was harder to decipher. Its handwriting was elegant, flowing, yet hurried, betraying the urgency of the writer. Only fragments were legible, but those fragments contained names, dates, references, and cryptic notes that made everyone in the room exchange tense, uncomfortable glances. This wasn't just correspondence from the past. It connected to events they believed long settled, questions assumed answered, secrets presumed buried. The weight of it pressed on the room like a silent threat. And then there was the symbol. None recognized it immediately, yet its presence felt deliberate, purposeful, significant. It appeared again at the bottom of the letter, drawn with the same careful hand that had written the rest of the words above. William reached out with unsteady fingers, picking up the photograph once more. His eyes glistened with moisture as they lingered on his mother's face, frozen in time, happy, vulnerable, alive in a way he had never known. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched slightly as he fought to maintain control over emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. One of the senior advisors cleared his throat softly. "Your Royal Highness, we need to determine if these items are authentic." William nodded, still staring, still silent, still lost in the photograph. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with feeling, a mixture of awe and disbelief. "They're real. I can feel it." Catherine's hand tightened on his arm, an anchor to the present, as if to remind him that he was not alone in this storm of discovery. She looked at the items spread before them, her heart aching. Whatever secrets these objects held, they were about to reshape everything they thought they knew. "If this is real, it changes everything," William said quietly, finally setting the photograph down. The words settled across the room like falling snow, quiet but transformative, resonating through every person present. Everyone understood the implications. If these items were genuine, if they revealed truths long hidden or denied, the foundation of their world, the very truths they had relied upon, might be built on sand, fragile and uncertain. The head of security spoke next, with calm authority. "We will launch a full investigation immediately. Complete discretion. No leaks. No external involvement." Palace security moved with silent efficiency, each member understanding the gravity of the situation. Everyone who had been near William's car that evening was quietly contacted and brought in for questioning. Staff members, event coordinators, security personnel, even the drivers. Each interview was conducted with polite, thorough attention to detail, ensuring that nothing was overlooked. Camera footage from every angle was pulled, scrutinized frame by frame. Hour after hour, the security team pored over the recordings, their eyes burning from staring at screens, searching for the precise moment when someone had placed those items in the royal vehicle. And then, finally, they found him. A man appeared for just a few seconds on camera. During a brief moment when the guards had been distracted by the crowd, he moved near William's car, ordinary clothing, a cap pulled low, nothing to draw attention, yet his movements were deliberate. He reached into the vehicle, removed something, and vanished as quickly as he appeared, melting back into the crowd before anyone noticed, a ghost in plain sight, leaving behind only questions and the mysterious objects that had shocked them all. The team enhanced the footage, but the angle and quality were poor. He remained untraceable, a shadow impossible to identify. William replayed the sequence repeatedly, scrutinizing every gesture, searching for meaning in the fleeting seconds. Who was this person? What did he want? And most importantly, how had he known about things that should have remained buried, safely hidden from the world? Two powerful emotions warred within William. Fear whispered that some truths were too dangerous, that probing further might unleash consequences better left undiscovered. Anger burned hotter, insisting that he had the right to know, demanding that he uncover the person manipulating his family's history. Catherine remained steadfast at his side, a quiet, stabilizing presence through the uncertainty. She spoke little, knowing sometimes support meant simply being there, not attempting to solve the unsolvable. She ensured the children remained oblivious to the crisis, preserving their innocence even as her own heart raced with concern. The night deepened, stretching toward dawn, while most of the palace slept, oblivious to the storm unfolding behind closed doors. William finally retreated to his private study, exhausted yet unable to rest. His mind spun with questions, possibilities, fears he couldn't even voice to Catherine. He sat in darkness, staring at nothing, when suddenly his private phone buzzed. The sound was jarringly loud in the silence of the room. Expecting a message from security with an update, he picked it up, and instead found a text from an unknown number. Just 6 words, but they struck him like a physical blow. "Now you know where it began." His hands tightened until his knuckles turned white. He read the message again, then again, as if repetition might reveal some hidden meaning. Someone out there knew what he had discovered. Someone was watching, orchestrating every step of this unfolding situation. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Royal Archive, casting long shadows across rows of ancient filing cabinets and shelves lined with leather-bound volumes. This part of the palace rarely saw visitors. Dust motes danced in the pale sunlight, undisturbed for decades, until today. William entered alone, having dismissed his usual security detail with firm, gentle insistence. What he needed required privacy, silence, and the freedom to search without curious eyes observing his every move. The archivist, a woman who had served the palace for 30 years, greeted him with quiet surprise, but asked no questions. Royals seeking old records had their reasons, and her discretion was absolute. William made his request carefully, keeping his voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. Documents from his mother's time, correspondence, meeting notes, anything sealed away after her death. The archivist raised her eyebrows slightly, but nodded and disappeared into the maze of shelves. William waited, heart pounding, each passing second stretching longer than the last. He had barely slept, his mind working through the night, connecting dots, following threads of memory and intuition, all leading to this moment. When the archivist returned, she carried several boxes, their faded labels hinting at decades of history. She set them on a long table and quietly left him alone, understanding without being told that this was a matter of absolute privacy. William opened the first box, hands trembling but refusing to betray weakness. Inside lay stacks of papers, photographs, and folders organized by date. He began sorting them methodically, eyes hunting desperately for anything matching the items from the night before. Hours passed, morning stretched into afternoon, and slowly, painfully, a pattern began to emerge. Letters written in his mother's distinctive handwriting, some marked with symbols in the margins, the same intricate design that had appeared on the card found in his car. Meeting notes referencing concerns about privacy, trust, and people who might not have had her best interests at heart, all pointing to truths long hidden, yet now painfully visible in black and white. Documents suggested Diana had been aware of things happening around her, threats, both subtle and direct, that she had tried to document, protect herself against, and warn others about. William's chest tightened as he read the words his mother had written decades ago. Her voice came through the pages, strong yet worried, loving yet cautious, carrying the weight of foresight and fear, as though she was speaking to him across time. She had known something, feared something, and had tried to leave a trail, a warning for those who might need it in the future. Later, his phone buzzed, pulling him from the depths of the past. Catherine's name appeared on the screen. He answered, his voice rough from hours of silence. She spoke quickly, urgently, breathless with her own discoveries. She had been conducting her own investigation, reviewing Diana's personal effects stored in another part of the palace. Among the items she had found were notebooks filled with private thoughts, observations, and insights. Scattered throughout the pages were those same symbols, drawn repeatedly, sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by names, dates, and notes that clearly signified something important. William closed his eyes. The pieces were falling into place with terrible clarity. Someone close to the family had known about these symbols, had understood their significance, and had access to information that should have remained locked away forever. Someone with knowledge and intent. Someone who had waited for the precise moment to act. That evening, as darkness settled over the palace, William made a decision. He needed answers that couldn't be found in old papers or forgotten files. He needed to speak to someone who had been there, who had known his mother firsthand. The man he sought was elderly, now retired from royal service, but still living nearby. He had been one of Diana's trusted advisors during her final years, someone she had confided in when trust became a rare commodity. William appeared at his door, unannounced. The old man's face went pale as he recognized who stood before him. No formalities were exchanged. They sat in a modest living room far from the grandeur of palaces and ceremonial protocol, the weight of history pressing on the small space. William did not waste time. He described what had been found in his car, showed photographs of the items on his phone, and waited. The old advisor's hands trembled as he studied the images, wrestling with decades of loyalty, discretion, and buried truths. Finally, he began to speak, his voice heavy with the burden of carrying secrets for so many years. Diana had feared this exact situation, he explained. She had known that certain letters and documents in her possession contained information that powerful people would want suppressed. She worried those materials might someday be used against her sons, twisted into weapons, or revealed at moments designed to cause maximum damage. She had attempted to secure everything, controlling what would happen to her private papers after her death. But in the chaos that followed, many things were scattered, lost, or possibly taken by those who understood their value. The letter found in William's car, the advisor confirmed with sad certainty, was one of those missing pieces. It had been written during a particularly difficult period, containing warnings about individuals still active within the royal circle. Names, concerns, observations about those she suspected of working against her interests. William sat frozen, the full picture crystallizing before him. The discovery was no accident. It wasn't a random security lapse or coincidence. Someone had deliberately placed the items where he would find them, ensuring he would see what his mother had feared, to remind him that the past wasn't as settled as everyone pretended. But why now, after all these years, in such a dramatic and precise way? The advisor had no answer to that. He could only relay what he knew, what he had witnessed, and what he had kept silent about for decades, out of respect for Diana and fear of consequences. William left as quietly as he had arrived, his mind reeling. He drove through darkened streets himself, needing the simple act of control in a world suddenly spinning beyond his grasp. Back in his private quarters, Catherine waited. She saw the truth etched on his face before he spoke. She moved to him, wrapping her arms around him as he finally allowed himself to feel the weight of everything he had learned. They stood together in the darkness, two people trying to make sense of a puzzle spanning decades, touching the deepest wounds of William's past. Outside the palace, life continued its routines, oblivious to the prince uncovering truths buried with his mother. William pulled back slightly, his eyes meeting Catherine's, a mixture of pain, clarity, and determination within them. He whispered the words that had been forming in his mind all day, the realization that changed everything. Someone wants me to remember what she couldn't say. When silence became dangerous, an emergency meeting was called before sunrise. In a grand room, usually reserved for ceremonial occasions, senior palace officials gathered with grave faces and worried whispers. They sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, all eyes fixed on William, who stood rather than sat, his posture rigid, frustration barely contained, and the weight of the revelation evident in his every movement. The oldest advisor, a man who had served 3 generations of royals, cleared his throat and began his rehearsed speech. The monarchy's image must be protected above all else, he said. Scandals, even those rooted in the distant past, could damage public trust. The best course of action: silence, secure the discovered items, and allow the matter to fade into the shadows where it belonged. William listened, jaw tightening, each word a calculated attempt to preserve appearances. When the advisor finished, silence filled the room, heavy and stagnant. William finally spoke. His voice carried a steel edge that made several officials shift nervously in their seats. He refused, flatly and completely, leaving no room for negotiation. He demanded answers. Who had taken his mother's private letters? Who had hidden them for decades, and who now used them to send cryptic messages? He wanted justice, not just for himself, but for Diana, whose voice had been silenced in life and was now being manipulated even in death. The tension became almost tangible. Some advisors exchanged furtive glances. Others stared at their hands, suddenly fascinated by their own fingers. A few showed visible nervousness, faces pale, hands fidgeting unnecessarily with papers. William noticed everything. Trained since childhood to read rooms, he caught subtle tells revealing what people truly thought beneath the polished words. What he saw troubled him deeply. These men weren't merely concerned about public relations. Some were genuinely afraid. Fear only made sense if they had something to lose. The meeting dissolved without resolution, officials departing with tight lips and worried eyes. William remained, staring at the empty chairs, wondering which of these trusted servants might be hiding secrets of their own. Catherine felt the change in atmosphere like a shift in air pressure before a storm. Strange things had begun occurring around their private residence within the palace grounds. Small at first, almost imperceptible, items moved from where she had placed them, doors left open that she remembered closing. The pervasive, chilling feeling of being watched, even in supposedly secure spaces. She said nothing to William at first, not wanting to add to his burden, but when she found footprints in the garden beneath their bedroom window, prints that were fresh, despite security sweeps supposedly covering every inch of the grounds, her maternal instincts overrode her desire to protect him from worry. A shiver ran down her spine. Someone had been close, too close, in the dark of night. That night, she told him everything. They stood together in their bedroom, speaking in hushed tones, even though they were alone, suddenly aware of how vulnerable they truly were, despite all the guards and protocols meant to keep them safe. William's face darkened with anger and concern. He immediately contacted the head of security, demanding increased surveillance and protection, especially around areas where their children played and slept. The breakthrough came 3 nights later, at an hour when most of the palace slept peacefully. Motion sensors near William's private garage triggered a silent alarm, but security personnel responded within seconds, moving through the darkness with practiced precision and drawn weapons. They spotted a figure crouched near William's car, doing something they couldn't quite see from their position. The guards called out, identifying themselves and ordering the person to freeze. Instead of complying, the intruder bolted. The chase was brief, chaotic, and tense. The figure moved with surprising speed through gardens and pathways, clearly familiar with the layout. Despite the darkness, guards pursued, shouting into radios, coordinating their pursuit. But the intruder had planned an escape route, slipping through a service entrance that should have been locked, yet somehow stood open. By the time additional security reached the exit point, the person had vanished into the London night, leaving only questions, shadows, and the sound of running footsteps fading into silence. In their haste to escape, the intruder had dropped something. A guard found it lying on the ground near where they had first spotted the figure. Another envelope, this one unsealed, its contents partially visible. William was woken and brought to the security office immediately under bright lights. Surrounded by the watchful eyes of his protection team, he opened the envelope fully and withdrew what lay inside. Another letter. The paper was old, delicate, and the handwriting achingly familiar. His mother's words stared at him across the years, but unlike the previous discovery, this letter was different, more personal, more raw. It spoke of fears she had never voiced publicly, truths she could not speak aloud. She had tried to document them for a future day when they might be needed. At the bottom, underlined twice for emphasis, was a line that made William's blood run cold. The cryptic sentence hinted at unfinished business, secrets reaching beyond her own story into the present day. It suggested that what she had feared wasn't just about her own safety, but about the future of her sons and the family they would one day lead. William read the words over and over, each pass revealing new layers of meaning, each phrase pressing on his mind like a hammer. His mother had been trying to protect him, even then leaving breadcrumbs that might someday guide him through dangers she foresaw but could not fully name. Something shifted in him at that moment. This wasn't merely about solving a mystery or catching whoever was leaving these messages. This was about understanding that the past and present were entangled, that old threats could reach forward through time to touch the people he loved most. He finally understood. This wasn't only about the past. It was about protecting the future. The decision crystallized in his mind with absolute clarity. No more hiding, no more secrets, no more letting unnamed forces control the narrative through fear and manipulation. He would reveal everything, regardless of what the advisors wanted, regardless of consequences to his own reputation or comfort. The next morning, William requested the presence of his closest advisors and key family members. They assembled in a private drawing room, confusion evident on most faces. No one had expected this gathering, and the formality of the summons suggested something significant. William stood before them, Catherine at his side, her presence a silent statement of unity and support. He began to speak, his voice calm but carrying the authority of absolute certainty. He told them everything, the discovery in his car, the archive research, the conversation with his mother's old advisor, the midnight intruder, the letters that kept appearing like ghosts, refusing to stay buried. He laid out the whole story without embellishment, just facts presented in their stark, uncomfortable truth. The disturbing discovery wasn't a bomb or a weapon. It was far more emotionally devastating. Proof that his mother's private words and deepest fears had been stolen, hidden, and then manipulated over decades. Diana's writings revealed concerns about people still influential in royal circles. She had documented suspicions, recorded conversations, and tried to create a record to protect her sons from those who didn't have their best interests at heart. And someone had taken those protections and twisted them into weapons. William's voice grew stronger as he continued, breaking through the careful control. He spoke about trust betrayed, about how his mother's legacy had been corrupted, about how her words were being used to threaten and intimidate the family she had passed away loving. Catherine remained beside him, her hand occasionally touching his arm in quiet support. Her eyes scanned the room, noting reactions: shock, thoughtfulness, discomfort. William concluded with a vow that resonated like a bell through the room. No secret would define his family again. No fear would force them into silence. No threat, however carefully orchestrated, would make them abandon the search for truth. "This ends now," he said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it with honesty." The room remained silent. Then slowly, heads began to nod. Not everyone agreed. Some faces still showed concern about public reaction and institutional damage, but even the skeptics could not deny the power of William's conviction or the righteousness of his anger. Catherine squeezed his hand, pride evident in her eyes. Whatever battles lay ahead, they would face them together, determined to protect their children from the shadows haunting previous generations. The next morning brought a change in atmosphere that everyone in the palace could feel, though few understood its source. The air seemed lighter somehow, as if a heavy burden pressing down on the ancient walls had suddenly lifted. And now the world would soon know the story that had been hidden for decades, the secrets, the messages, the courage of a mother trying to protect her sons. They would no longer remain buried. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment below. Your support helps bring more untold stories to light.